It's time to talk sports. It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions.
Touchdown, San Diego!
Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
Who wants to talk sports on a Thursday? We do. From the DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center studios in San Diego, where it's 111 degrees on a Thursday, it's time to talk NFL football. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, along with my co-host, who for the first time in his life is complaining about the heat and humidity in San Diego, John Riley. We welcome you to our Thursday podcast. It is the opening night. It is the opening weekend of the National Football League season, and we're going to talk NFL football from start to finish. It is our popular NFL preview. This podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers, 9 stores in San Diego to serve you. You've got projects in the home, at work, or maybe out on the patio by the pool. Think DIXIELINE Lumber. John Riley, we have loved the baseball pennant races and all the other topics that we talk about on our daily podcast, but this is the start of the NFL season. And to quote, when Howard Cosell and Dandy Don and Frank Gifford were on Monday Night Football, you remember the opening scene? The country western singer? Are you ready for some football? We are. How you doing?
Good. I think that was Shania Twain, wasn't it? But yeah, this is a great day. It's like a holiday in America for a lot of people, and we've been looking forward to the season, the new rules for the kickoffs. It's going to be a wild game tonight.
Yeah, we're going to go a lot of different directions. Couple of business items. I have a lot of openings on my bandwagon now on Twitter. You know, you're entitled to your own opinion about politics, but if I put something about politics on my Twitter account, half the world unfollows me by 3 hours later. There's stop laughing. I heard you do that. There are a lot of openings on my bandwagon. Who wants to become part of my Twitter all-star team? Looking for followers. Just go to X at Hacksaw1090, at Hacksaw1090. Follow me because we put a ton of sports and occasionally a political comment that opens up spots on the bandwagon for you. Invite you to join us. You like sports, you got to read my website. I write on it every day. When we're done with this podcast, I want you to just punch up my website, leehacksawhamilton.com. Just see how much the volume of information that is there. You can pick whatever sport you want to follow because it's all broken up from football to baseball to basketball to hockey and then other storylines. But check it every morning, guarantee you'll be pleased. leehacksawhamilton.com. And because John Riley's got this wild thought he's going to buy everybody shots of tequila who join our insiders group, go to my webpage right there, big orange box right at the top. Just fill out your name. You become part of the insiders group. You get emails. We email stuff out every day to the people on the insiders group, and hell, there might be a free beer or a shot of tequila somewhere down the road. Also, want to remind you, share, subscribe, tell everybody what we do. We're here Mondays at 1 p.m., Thursdays at 1 p.m. with our podcast on the YouTube channel, and want you to subscribe, because if you subscribe, then you get into the email list where you get the alerts every time we put something up on the podcast, and we put stuff up there on the YouTube channel virtually every day. And when we're done picking them, pal, we're going to let John Riley's best friends enter through the door that says Fans Forum on it. John, for everybody who's new on the stream, just tell them how Fans Forum works.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, you've been doing your one man's opinion for over 4 decades, man, putting the content out. Maybe you have an opinion, you have a question or a comment for Hacksaw. Just drop your comment or question in the live chat on Facebook, X, or YouTube, and we'll get you involved in Fans Forum.
Fans Forum comes up right at the end after we do the breakdown. This is NFL Preview Day. On our Thursday podcast, want to hear from you about what we're going to say about the division-by-division races. John, let's start in the American Football Conference, and we'll go to the AFC East.
The AFC East. You got the Dolphins here at the top.
Plain and simple. TUA-TYREEK. It's their time. Miami has spent a volume of money. They are loaded offensively. They've been pretty competitive defensively. They got a coach that a lot of people respect. I think Miami is about to arrive as being an AFC power, not just good. Tua, third year as a starter. I think he's grown a great deal. He stayed on the field all last year after having a concussion issues, the hip injuries prior to that. Tyreek Hill, phenomenal. Blazing speed, one of the highest paid wide receivers. Jalen Waddle is the second in that mix at wide receiver. And when you average 18 yards per catch on the other side of Tyreek Hill, that's pretty impressive. And now they got OBJ. Odell Beckham Jr. is now the third receiver in the equation. The only negative to me about Miami is that they lost Christian Wilkins, the defensive tackle. They had so many issues with the salary cap. Tua's contract, Tyreek's contract, Waddle's extension. They couldn't keep Christian Wilkins, which I think impacts the defensive front. But I got Miami winning it. Here's the surprise. I'm picking Aaron Rodgers and the boys with the New York Jets. And you may say this is a reach, and I might wake up tomorrow with a shoulder injury reaching this far. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be such a massive difference maker. He will fix all that ails for the Jets as long as he stays on the field. Now, they've added a lot. They went out and they got the Charger big wide receiver, Mike Williams. They got a tight end. They fixed the injury-ravaged offensive line by getting Tyron Smith, the Pro Bowl left tackle from the Dallas Cowboys. They've got running backs led by Breece Hall. I think it's a really good team. Their defense has always been rugged, and now they got Aaron Rodgers. I'm picking the Jets as a surprise. In Buffalo, I got them finishing third, and if there's a transplanted Bills fan that's with us on the live stream, you have the invitation to call and jump up and down. They got greatness in Josh Allen, but there is no longer Stephon Diggs. They have never solved the gap in the running game. They lose Mike Milano, the inside linebacker. They let Trey White, the top DB, go because of injury problems. I just don't think they're a complete team. I think the window of opportunity for the Buffalo Bills, I think, is kind of closed. I got Buffalo finishing a surprising, disappointing third. And then I got life after Belichick being really hard in New England. Bill Belichick is gone. There's no doubt that Jared Mayo, the new head coach, comes from great lines, having been a linebacker and a star linebacker. They're going to be good on defense. I just question the makeup of the skill people on the roster. I just don't think they have very much skill around the quarterback. And they're starting Jacoby Brissett. I think they ought to be starting Drake May, but I just don't think there's enough talent in New England to even support the rookie quarterback. I think it's going to be a miserable season in Foxborough, and I'm not talking about the winter weather that arrives October 15th. Do you know, since Belichick said goodbye to Tom Brady, or Tom Brady said goodbye to Belichick, they are 29-38, and this might be the worst season of all because I just think they're so negligible in skill talent around whoever the quarterback's going to be. I just think it's going to be a miserable season. John Riley, you get the smirk on your face, this gleam in your eye. I guess you're going to disagree with me. Go ahead. You tell me what you think about the East.
Aaron Rodgers, I don't even think he's going to make it through this season healthy. I mean, something's bound to happen, right? I mean, he's not going to, if he doesn't blow out another Achilles, he's going to blow out an ACL, or he's going to show up one day and he's going to be 62 years old. I mean, I just don't see it happening. I mean, I'd love to see Robert Saleh have some success, but to me, Josh Allen is a supreme talent, but I was concerned that they're missing a lot of pieces in Buffalo. I go back in time also thinking about Miami. Remember, they had the great teams in the 70s and even in the 80s, but Miami hasn't really made it to the Super Bowl since the 80s, right? It's been a long, long time.
But they've been building. I mean, you're not going to argue with me that they don't have great skill, are you?
Oh, no, of course not. No, they're loaded. And by the way, it is nice to see the Patriots at the bottom of the list. I mean, they were at the top of the NFC East for like 2 decades. So good for these other teams to get a shot. But for me, I've got Miami 1, I've got the Bills 2, and the Jets 3, and the Patriots 4.
The wild card in the argument about the Jets is that they fixed this offensive line. Their offensive line was just a wreck last year. And of course, Aaron Rodgers got hurt right in the first game. But they've gone out. You go get Tyron Smith. That's a really good left tackle. And Dallas had to let him go because of cap issues. He had one major injury. But they've got 3 new offensive linemen. Most of them have really recognizable names, Tyron Smith being the best. That's with Breece Hall and what they've got at wide receiver and what they brought in. I just think that they're going to be the surprise team. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to wind up in the hospital because I think this offensive line is going to pass block and they're going to run block for Breece Hall. So, yeah, I like chocolate milkshakes, so you'll buy me a chocolate milkshake when the Jets finish.
How old is Aaron Rodgers? Is he 40?
No, he's going on 38 or 39.
Okay, but he's got gray hair and the beard, man. I mean, I'm shocked that he's still playing, really.
That's him.
I know it is him, but I will be shocked if he makes it through 17 games.
Okay,
who's the backup with the Jets?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head,
because they got rid of Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I can't pull that off the top of my memory bank right now. Anyhow, he's not going to go down. Trust me, he's got a good offensive front. Okay, so if you're an AFC East football fan, show us your driver's license and who you root for, and then get on Fans Forum. Jump on board, because it's obvious he and I don't agree on some of these teams. Next division, where do you want to go, John?
We're going to go to the AFC North, and there's our friends, the Ravens. They're playing tonight.
Quoth the Ravens-Nevermore. All right. Let's talk about the North. This might be the best division in the NFL. Ravens, Lamar Jackson. Now, granted, they shuffled running backs out the door. Their history in Baltimore is get rid of players a year too early, then keep them a year too late and kill yourself with the salary cap. They added Derrick Henry. That's heavy duty. That's a star from the Tennessee Titans. That's 8,000 yards worth of running back who's going to line up behind Lamar Jackson this first game of the season. They got 3 young wide receivers. They got really quality tight end Mark Andrews, who's now back after a season of injuries. I think the only burning question, they've had so many injuries in the secondary, led by just problem after problem with Marlon Humphrey, who might be as good a DB as there is in the league. Those guys are all back healthy. Can they stay healthy? That remains to be seen, but I got Baltimore as the team to beat. Cleveland doesn't have a logo on their helmet. Their helmet is all orange. You ought to put a question mark there. The Browns, awful lot of money tied up in Deshaun Watson. This is not the Deshaun Watson we saw as a star in Houston before he got himself in all kinds of trouble, and then before he suffered the really bad shoulder injury, and he did not play in any preseason games, and they've had to baby him through because of soreness in the shoulder. That's item 1. Item 2, they don't have their heavy-duty running back, Nick Chubb. You know, he's had 2 torn knee ligaments, and he is rehabbed nonstop, and he's still not ready. He's on the 4-week PUP. So now you're down your star quarterback, or your star quarterback's yet to prove he's 100%, and you're down your top running back. Do have Amari Cooper, no doubt about that. Veteran offensive line, but their bookend tackles have had a lot of injury problems, led by Jed Wills from Alabama. He just can't stay on the field. He missed all of preseason. He's now been activated. I don't know how many snaps he'll take in the first game before he gets hurt again, because those guys are always hurt. And they've got a vibrant defense led by Myles Garrett, but a lot of injuries on the back end. Their top defensive back is Denzel Ward, Ohio State star. He's had 5 different head injuries over the course of his career. Now, he's cleared to play, but he seems to be concussion prone. So the Browns, dog pound, they got a question mark. Cincinnati's got greatness at quarterback. There's no doubt about that in Joe Burrow. Cincinnati does not have a good organization around that quarterback, and he gets hurt every year because he takes so many shots. And now you got the Bengals with Jamar Chase, who's in the midst of this contract spitting contest. And they got a really unhappy second wide receiver in T. Higgins. They let Tyler Boyd go. They got injuries at tight end. I don't like very much anything about their offensive front. And they ran Joe Mixon, their heavy-duty back, out the door, released him. So it's Joe Burrow against the world. And I'm not sure their defense is real good, and their defense wasn't good last year as they fell apart after Burrows got hurt. This is not a Joe Burrows problem. This is a Mike Brown organizational problem. It just goes on and on and on, and that's a quarterback getting his brains beat out. Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season in 17 years. This might be the first time. But you know what? If you look at the track record of Mike Tomlin, even towards the tail end of the Roethlisberger era when he was on gas fumes and they weren't playing well and turning the ball over, as a team, they got progressively better and better as the season wore on. Same thing last year. He coaches them up and gets them better as the season wears on. Now, he's renting 2 one-year quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. I don't know how much gas Wilson's got left. Fields is highly, wildly erratic. They've spent the entire offseason in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, working on footwork to try to get him to be a good pocket passer rather than a scramble on the mode passer. They don't want to change their offense for him. I just don't know that Pittsburgh's got enough weapons on offense, and they got uncertainty, obviously, at the wide receiver and quarterback position. No doubt, though, they got defense. My God, they got defense. And they play so hard. T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward and all those guys. Going to be interesting. They're going to force feed their kids. They drafted 3 offensive linemen. 2 of them, I think, are going to start this weekend for the Steelers in their first game. But they got uncertainty at quarterback. I don't know what to make of Russell Wilson. He looks like a really old quarterback now, like a guy that woke up all of a sudden he's 36. And Justin Fields, as dynamic as an athlete as he is, he's just so wildly erratic, overthrowing people, making decisions, or running with the football way too much, which leads to him getting hurt. So there's a lot of uncertainty in Pittsburgh, but they do have Mike Tomlin. They'll probably coach him up. But I'll tell you, it's a tough-ass physical division. John Riley, do you want to walk into a dark alley with anybody in the AFC North?
It's like a black and blue division.
Exactly.
If Chris Berman were here. I mean, I'm just looking at these teams, and it seems like every year they're always talking about the Ravens are going to finally do it. And, yeah, sure, they'll win the division, but they always end up getting knocked out in the playoffs. So I'm just kind of wondering if this is their year. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think that there's also kind of an undercurrent rumor that as great as they are during the season and dynamic as Lamar Jackson is, when you need to be a complete quarterback and make the right decision in playoffs, it doesn't happen for him. Either turnovers or sacks. He just doesn't complete the deal. So I think organizationally that's a fine team in terms of player acquisitions. And they do hit the eject button on players a lot. Get the guy out a year early, go replace him with young guys. They draft really well. But I don't know if Jackson is the complete superstar that you think of. He's great. What an unbelievable athlete. Yeah. But at the end of the season, the most important time of the season when you're playing the best teams, you got to be able to play and not fumble the football or not throw interceptions. And I think the jury's still, to me, it's a little bit out on Lamar Jackson. Does that make sense to you? And what do you think about the trouble in Cleveland and what the Bengals have become?
Well, I mean, just one last thing on Lamar. It's, now that it's the season, 17 games. That's why I asked you who the backup quarterback was with the Jets, because, you're seeing this in other sports where the stars will kind of sit out a little bit during the middle of the year to try to be fresh at the end of the season. So it makes me wonder who the backup quarterbacks are for each of these teams.
Tyler Huntley in Baltimore, and he just went back there.
Okay. All right. So that works. But the other teams, I love Joe Burrow. I love all the swag. I love the cigars when he wins. I love everything about that guy. And when he went down with the injury, I felt bad for him. So I'm hoping he has a bounce back here. And I'm rooting for the Steelers. I mean, I would like to see, one of these two quarterbacks, either Fields or Wilson, sort of resurrect their career and maybe impress us. Cleveland, I'm not sure what to make of that. So, I like your call with the Ravens at the top, but I like to see the Bengals competitive.
It's going to be interesting. I don't think Burrow can be competitive because I don't think he has people around him. Hey, you follow the Ravens. If you're a Browns fan who got deported from Cleveland, anybody agree with me on Cincinnati? I know there's transplanted Steeler fans drinking Iron City beer this afternoon. Jump on board. Fans forum chat box is open. Want to hear what you've got to say about the AFC North race. Next one.
The AFC South. I mean, Houston has arrived.
Oh, Texans have been building towards this. Nick Caserio is their general manager. He was a refugee from the Belichick system. He's done a good job. D'Amico Ryans is just what a bright light defensive coordinator turned head coach he's become in Houston. C.J. Stroud, what a phenomenal rookie season throwing the football. And then the Texans go out. They got 3 young wide receivers that they lived off of last year. They go out and they get Stephon Diggs. And then they go out and they get Joe Mixon. Well, Diggs is a big-time pass catcher, yards down the field guy when he's not complaining. Mixon is heavy-duty, tough, can catch it as well as run it. And, of course, they've got themselves Will Anderson, who was a top-high #1 pick a year ago. That's a do-everything linebacker that a lot of people are comparing to Lawrence Taylor. And then they went out and they signed Minnesota's top pass rusher, Danielle Hunter. I mean, they're hitting every button correctly in Houston. And I don't think it's a great division. I got the Texans running away with this thing. Jacksonville is paying Trevor Lawrence $55 million a year. He better play like a $55 million quarterback, which means it's more than just making the playoffs and then getting beat. Trevor Lawrence, they've added a couple of wide receivers led by Gabe Davis and Devin Duvernay, who came from Baltimore. Davis came from Buffalo. So that's going to make that wide receiver group better. Travis Etienne's in his third year. He came with Trevor Lawrence from Clemson. He's evolved into a pretty good back. And they went into the marketplace and they took the defensive tackle of the 49ers, Eric Armstead, who's kind of a playing defensive tackle's not a sexy position. But tell you, he clogs up things and he's physically strong at the point of attack. I think Jacksonville's got the potential to be good. I don't think Jacksonville is Houston good, but I think Jacksonville's okay. Indianapolis, I think this whole season swings on Anthony Richardson, the quarterback, AR-15. Can they keep him in the pocket as a passer? Because last year, I remember when we were previewing the draft, we were talking about Anthony Richardson. I said, what a physical stud. You watch the video of what he did at the University of Florida, and you say, holy cow, what an athlete. But that was against college guys, and that was running a lot and throwing some and making plays. And he did the same thing. He got to preseason. He got lit up in preseason with the Colts and got hurt early in the season with a shoulder injury. All this byproduct of scrambling. They have to keep him in the pocket. They're also wafer thin at skill position. They had just a terrible siege of injuries at wide receiver last year. They've had running back problems with Jonathan Taylor's health. They need to have good support people. They need depth at wide receiver. They need to have a backup running back because Taylor has had chronic shoulder problems, seems to get dinged up. So I guess my question about Indy, as much as I like Richardson, do they have enough around Richardson and will Richardson stay in the pocket so he doesn't get busted up? Tennessee's in massive rebuild mode, new coaching staff and Brian Callahan. They force-fed their kid quarterback last year, Will Levis. He played really, really well out of Kentucky. They've rebuilt the defense. I don't know if they have enough offensive skill right now because there is no Derrick Henry. It's going to be a very, very different team. Maybe they're another draft away, but they were very active in terms of adding pieces in the offseason and free agency. But Houston, far and away, Houston has arrived. And John Riley says...
Oh, I remember the Oilers back in the day.
Yeah,
Houston deserves a good team, and it was great seeing C.J. Stroud come out of the gate as a rookie, hopefully no sophomore slump. But they haven't fixed the stadium. They still have those big gaps in the roof, so hopefully no hurricanes come. I look at these other teams. Yeah, I agree with you. Anthony Richardson is really fun to watch, and so you want to see him have success. The Titans, why did they get rid of Vrabel? What was the story on that?
He fought with the general manager over what the personality of the roster should be. He wanted more decision-making power, and that's why Vrabel's on in essence, a year's hiatus. I think he's a really good coach. I think he's going to resurface, but he and the GM just were at loggerheads as to the draft and who we should pick and we should go get in free agency. And when you played Tennessee under Mike Vrabel, you were going to get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, this is going to be a very different football team right now, so they're in a little bit of transition. Hey, you like NFL football? Any of those teams in the AFC South you root for? That Fans Forum chat box is open. Jump on board. All that in the AFC, except what's going on here at home. John, next division.
Yeah, the AFC West. Here we go, Lee. You've got the Chiefs repeating.
Well, until somebody takes it away from them, yeah. Mm-hmm. There have been 8 teams in the history of the NFL, John, that have won back-to-back Super Bowls. It's happened 8 times. Nobody has won 3 in a row. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are going to try to change that this season. Kansas City's got the coach. Kansas City's got the quarterback. Kansas City's got Swifty's boyfriend, Travis Kelce. Kansas City's got a young offensive line that they retooled last year. They're a little bit thin at wide receiver. It's going to be an issue early in the season, though they just brought J.J. Schuster-Smith back. They've got young wide receivers that just have not panned out. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown's not going to play at the start of the season, fractured collarbone. They're not hitting on all cylinders. So they got the quarterback, they got the tight end, they got the heavy-duty little running back, but I don't know that they've got solutions at wideout yet. Defensively, they're good. You know, when they were in the playoffs last year, I went back and counted. 9 of their starters of the 11 on defense were their own draft picks. That's a hell of an accomplishment. Yeah, exactly. I think Brett Veach is a really good general manager, gets no national credit whatsoever. That being said, there are 3 veterans who are kind of core players in that defense are gone, led by their inside linebacker, Willie Gay, Mike Edwards, who was a trustworthy cornerback. So they're going to be much younger on the defensive side, but Spagnuolo is a really good coordinator, and they got athletes. Those guys on that defensive side in Kansas City run. So I got Kansas City until somebody knocks them out. And remember, they had a lousy start last year. If you recall, they got beat at home at Arrowhead. I think their record at Arrowhead was 5-4. When's that ever happened?
Yeah, that was weird last year.
In the weird era, in the Andy Reid era. So I got them winning. Chargers, culture has changed. They got Harbaugh. They got Justin Herbert. I think they got a good general manager in Joe Ortiz. End of the day, 3 number ones in the offensive line. That not many people in the league have that type of quality. They will pass block for Justin Herbert very well. They didn't run block worth a lick in preseason, and they played their number one offensive line unit a lot in preseason. So I'm a little bit stymied. They keep saying, we got toughness, we got toughness. Well, they got size, I know that, but, geez, they couldn't run block at all. So that leads to the debate, the running backs. They got Gus Edwards from Baltimore, J.K. Dobbins from Baltimore, and they got 2 kids at 3 and 4 at the running back. But those first 2 Baltimore Ravens guys are coming off major injuries. Edwards is surgery and J.K. Dobbins 2 years worth of injuries. So can they hold up? And then, of course, there is no Keenan Allen. There is no Mike Williams. There is no Gerald Everett. Their top 3 pass catchers gone. They got young guys who can run, but they're young guys that haven't shown they can do it with any consistency. I do like Josh Palmer. Don't know about Quentin Johnston yet. He at flashes in preseason, he ran precise routes, caught balls. And in flashes in preseason and in practice, he kept dropping balls. So he needs to really take that next step and become really special. So they got the QB, which is huge. Because most places, when they fire the new coach shows up, it's like 3 Mile Island. There's nobody there. There's nothing left. Well, Jim Harbaugh walks in, and he's got something special. Justin Herbert. Defensively, they got 7 rush linebackers. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Tuia-Tagovailoa, the rookie from USC last year, Junior Colson, who they just drafted from Michigan, who flies, Denzel Perryman. Their linebacking group might be the best collective group. And Jesse Minter is a mad scientist defensive coordinator. They're going to send blitzes from everywhere. That's going to be the fun part to watch the Chargers on defense. I don't know about their defensive tackles. They cut the top 3 tackles. They left Morgan Fox, the veteran. They've got some plug-in guys, young guys. I don't know if any of those guys are real difference makers. Secondary's been rebuilt. They think their corners are going to hold up. I think their safeties, led by Derwin James, are okay. Schedule's really tough. I think, in all honesty, Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz, the GM, they're one more draft away from being elite in the AFC. I don't think it's going to happen this year. I got them finishing second. Raiders, new general manager Tom Telesco with loudmouth coach Antonio Pierce. Gardner Minshew competes. That's the one thing I can say about him, is he's just a warrior. He's also wild. Touchdowns, yes. Interceptions, yes. Ungodly number of fumbles and quarterback sacks. 105 sacks in 49 games. 30 fumbles in 49 games. That's way too much. They do have Devontae Adams. They do have Jacoby Myers, the ex-Patriot. They got Brock Bowers, the huge tight end out of Georgia. Mike Mayers, second-year tight end Notre Dame. They're skill guys. Going to be good there. I don't know what they got at running back because Josh Jacobs is gone to Green Bay. We'll see if Zamir Smith is the real deal, and we'll see if the offensive line's a real deal because that's going to be a big issue. Love their linebacking. I think their front 7. Getting Christian Wilkins defensively up front to go with Max Crosby and to go with Mal Kuntz on the other side. Suddenly, it's going to be tough to run against them. And they're going to send people because they've got this young linebacker, Diablo. They blitz him a lot. Raiders are going to be very aggressive. Their front 7, I think, is really good. I don't know about the back end there. Denver, this will be fun to watch. If you're keeping score at home, how quickly does Bo Nix come on as a starting quarterback? Sean Payton's playbook is very complicated, but Bo Nix is a smart dude. I think Bo Nix is going to do well. What's different in Denver as Payton starts another year there is they're healthy. They have not had catastrophic injuries. Last season, they had all their running backs hurt. And they just added Sammy Perrine from Kansas City, who's a really good third-down pass catcher. All their wide receivers were hurt. Well, they got rid of Jerry Jeudy, and a stunner to me, they released Tim Patrick. But they got young guys who can run, and they got Cortland Sutton, who's finally healthy. Defense has been good. Defense has been physical. So we'll find out if they can keep everybody offensively on the field healthy. I think they're going to be fun to watch. And Bo Nix's adjustment to all things Sean Payton. He's got so many. I would have told this last night by a guy in Denver. He's got so many plays on his wristband that the center wears a separate wristband with additional plays. That's how much stuff is in Sean Payton's playbook.
Amazing.
And Bo Nix is a pretty smart dude. So how does he handle all this? Or if he peeks under center and says, what was that play on your wristband? Denver's going to be fun to watch. I don't know if they have enough players, but at least they're healthy, and they got a really different quarterback with a really smart head coach. So, John Riley, you just take me from Arrowhead Stadium to SoFi Stadium to Allegiant Stadium to what's going on in the Mile High City. Your thoughts on the AFC West?
Well, it's hard to pick against the Chiefs. I mean, we kind of know that. I mean, there's obviously a lot of, focus, both from the football perspective and a TMZ perspective. So it'll be fun to watch. By the way, who do you think's going to win tonight's game, the Ravens or the Chiefs?
Oh, it's tough. I'm going to pick Kansas City till somebody beats Kansas City, but Lamar can beat Kansas City.
But it's in Kansas City, right?
Yes.
So this will be a fun game to watch. I'm looking forward to it. The Chargers, I love that they have a new coach and they're changing the culture, but I don't know what's going to happen. It's just so hard to predict. That's which kind of makes it interesting and fun, because I could see them winning it or finishing in dead last. I would love for the Raiders to be relevant again, if to be competing for the division, and getting into the playoffs. The NFL is better when the Raiders are better. So are they making incremental steps? Hopefully. And the Broncos, fun team to watch. I agree. I think Bo Nix is going to be a lot of fun to watch, to see him grow in that system. So all of my focus are on those two bottom teams to see if they can rise up.
Oh, you're a liar. You're going to watch a Kansas City game tonight because you're a big Swiftie fan. Just admit it to the thousands of people that you're a big Taylor Swift fan.
No, I'm just jealous of Travis Kelce.
That too.
Okay.
All right. Hey, we get to halftime. You got opinions on the AFC West, looking for you to jump on board. This is our NFL preview. Opening night, opening weekend of the National Football League season in the Fans Forum chat box. You need to fill it up regardless of what team you root for. This podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. 9 stores in San Diego to serve you. If you're looking for a redo in the kitchen, you're going to build new cabinets for the wife in the kitchen. You're looking to do something different in the bathrooms. You want to do something in the bedroom. Or if you ever saw John's Man Cave, you'd know why he's best friends with DIXIELINE. Or you want to do something in the family room or outside by the patio. These people have the materials. The other thing is these people have consultants, and these people have tremendous credibility in the construction community. Thinking projects? Think about these people. DIXIELINE Lumber. As we go to the second half of our NFL preview on a Thursday, going towards the great sports weekend, couple of reminders. Looking for you to join me, become part of Hacksaw's All-Star Twitter team. If you subscribe to X, I want you to follow me. Just punch it up at Hacksaw1090. At Hacksaw1090. Hit the follow button. Thereby, you'll get alerts every time I put something up on Twitter. By the way, you like sports? Have you checked my website, LeeHacksawHamilton.com? I converted this guy. This guy reads his Stucker every morning.
Every morning.
Unbelievable amount of information there. You like sports, check out my website. And while you go to the homepage of my website, there's an orange box in the upper right-hand side. It's for Hacksaw's Insiders Group. Join that because we email you all kinds of different things that we do as part of our presentation. Want you to share. Tell everybody what we do. Mondays at 1 p.m., Thursdays at 1 p.m. Want you to subscribe. The minute you subscribe, you will get the alerts every time we put something up on the YouTube channel, and we do a lot of that during the week. So make sure you subscribe. And when we're done, looking for people to join us here, you're going to co-host the final segment. John Riley, Explain Fans Forum.
Yeah, we need more people that are first-time callers, long-time listeners, right? So if you have a question about the NFL, all the division races, Hacksaw knows everything there is to know in the NFL. So type in your comment or question in the live chat, Facebook, X, or YouTube. We'll get you involved in Fans Forum.
And in addition to NFL, if you want to talk about college football, jump on board. You got a quick comment on the baseball pennant races. We've been covering extensively the Johnny Hockey tragedy in the National Hockey League. Feel free. Throw us a question or two there. We'll try to work you in. Fans Forum is coming up. Okay, we go to the second half of our NFL preview. I'm not going to be pompous about this. But I know everything about everything as it relates to the NFL. That's why this has become, this in our draft preview might be as popular a thing as we've ever concocted for this podcast.
Well, yeah. I mean, you provide all the information, jam-packed, all the sound bites. It's all right there.
We start second half, NFC East.
The beast in the East. Here we go.
Wow. Philadelphia. Nice headline. Explosion, implosion. Were you drinking before you came up with that one? Philadelphia Eagles. If they don't win, somebody's going to perish. Nick Sirianni had great success early with the Eagles. That was a Super Bowl he took them to as a young head coach. Great quarterback Jalen Hurts. Bad relationship last season. Their fall from grace last season was absolutely stunning. He blew up his coaching staff. He didn't take the hit. He put a lot of guys out on the street, unemployment line. They go into the marketplace trying to fix the team. They drafted DB early. They drafted 3 young defensive players. They were all probably going to play for the Eagles this first week of the season. And then they went across the state line. How the hell this was ever allowed to happen? They stole Saquon Barkley, who I think is one of the really complete running backs in the NFL, who's been buried in the spotlight because he's been on a bad New York Giants team. So they have A.J. Brown, and they have the former Heisman Trophy winner, and they got Jalen Hurts, and now they add Saquon Barkley, and they got a bunch of veteran studs in the front. And Kellen Moore comes in, the ex-Charger and Cowboy coordinator, comes in to be the OC in Philadelphia. Now, they've lost Fletcher Cox, who's retired, lost one of their linebackers who retired. They're going to be a little bit different defensively. I think Philadelphia's got it right there in front of them. But, boy, last year, how they disintegrated the second half of the season, it was absolutely stunning. I got Philadelphia to win. Dallas, they got Dak, yet to get his contract. C.D. Lamb, who's got his money. I think, and they got tight ends who can catch the ball. They've always developed good offensive linemen. There's a little bit of flux in the offensive line. I think the intangible in Dallas is the arrival of Dalvin Cook, the former 1,000-yard rusher Minnesota. I still think he's got gas left in the tank. So you got Cook, and you got the comeback of Ezekiel Elliott there. The only negative in Dallas, they've had been chewed up by injuries to the defensive front. There's no doubt that Micah Parsons is one of the great linebackers, but they lost his running mate, Landon Vander Esch, who's retired because of neck surgeries. That's a big blow there. Dallas is not a complete football team, but I think offensively they're going to be really dynamic. Speaking of another place that we could have changes, if the Giants don't win this season, somebody's going to pay the price. It might be the general manager. It might be the head coach, Brian Daboll. Daniel Jones has taken a fierce beating at quarterback for the New York Football Giants. He's had so many injuries. He's such a warrior. But now they don't have Saquon Barkley. And I don't think they've drafted very well, and they've had problems with their offensive line. Now, in the draft, they did add LSU's Malik Neighbors, and then they worked a deal to get Brian Burns, a big physical inside defensive lineman. That front on defense for the Giants might be better than anybody realizes, but can Daniel Jones do it without a lot of help? That becomes the big issue there. So that bears watching. If they have another bad season, somebody's going to pay the price. And in Washington, it's misery. Last week they cut 4 of last year's draft picks that were made by Ron Rivera. Just cut them loose. You don't do that. Usually you keep your draft picks for 3 or 4 years to grow them. But Dan Quinn came in and said, those guys can't play. Out of here. Jaden Daniels will play, starting quarterback LSU. Austin Eckler will make his debut wearing burgundy and gold, came from the Chargers. They got one good wide receiver from Ohio State, Terry McLaurin, but I just don't think they have enough players on offense. Defensively, at one time, that was a real good defensive front, but a couple of those guys have gotten hurt, gotten old. Some of the guys have gotten rid of. I just don't think that they have anywhere near a good 22 to start on offense and defense. So I think it's going to be a learning curve season for Dan Quinn as head coach, and I think it's going to be a learning curve season for Jaden Daniels. So that's how I view the East, and you're on your street corner because you always got opinions that are out there. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, well, as long as we can talk about out there. When I see the NFC East, I immediately think of Brent Musburger, the NFL Today on CBS, back in that era when the NFC East was loaded with talent.
Throwback.
A throwback. And the media fell in love with them. And we were always watching Dallas, Giants, Redskins, that whole thing. So I always think of that when I see this division. The Eagles, you got to assume, they're going to probably do well. Last year, they lost their last 7 in a row or something.
I think they were 1-6 at the end, which is unbelievable considering where they started.
Yeah, it was just insane. It just didn't make any sense. I want the Raiders to be relevant. I want the Cowboys to be relevant. I think it makes a more entertaining league. And I'll tell you what, that Trey Lance had a hell of a preseason. So if something happened to Prescott, they could probably keep this thing going. The Giants, it's just a mishmash. I'm shocked as you are that Saquon Barkley made the move to go to Philly. And then the Commanders, how do you think the kid's going to do? Daniels there, quarterback for the Washington.
He played 2 of the 3 preseason, and he coped with it. But that's preseason. There's a lot of those guys that he lined up against are no longer in the NFL. They're applying for jobs at different places. I just don't think they have enough people around him. There's no doubt he's an athlete. I mean, you don't put up the kind of numbers at LSU and Arizona State that Jaden Daniels put up unless you're a superstar athletically. But this is the NFL, and I'll guarantee you those defensive coordinators, they're going to come up with things that are going to make his life really, really hard as a rookie quarterback, and it's further complicated. He doesn't have a hell of a lot around him skill-wise. Outside of Austin Eckler and McLaurin, I don't think anybody can name who the other running backs and wide receivers are because there aren't any of name recognition. So I think it's going to be a tough year there for Washington. Hopefully he can stay on the field and he does not get hurt. We go from that division. What's the next one?
The next one, we're going to go to the NFC North, and the Lion roars.
Detroit opens with the Rams. That's a pretty good rivalry. Now, those pretty good storylines. Sean McVay, Dan Campbell, Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, who are traded for each other. And then, of course, all the draft picks. I think it's Detroit's year. I mean, they have built this thing through the draft. That is such a tough place to play in Detroit at Ford Field. They got Jared Goff, who's grown into a quarterback that makes plays downfield, not a quarterback just manages games. Amon St. Brown, kid from USC. Back-to-back 100-reception season, big payday. For the first time, they got depth at wide receiver in the offseason. They went into the free agent market, and they rented a couple of guys. Defensively, they got Aiden Hutchinson. That's a warrior pass rusher defensive end. He is the NFC's version of Mad Max Crosby of the Raiders in terms of going to get the quarterback. They play really hard. They went into the marketplace. They built through the draft defensively, but they went back into the marketplace. They had bulk. They got DJ Reader, the starting defensive tackle from Cincinnati, and they got Marcus Davenport, pretty good pass rusher. He'll be on the opposite side. He came from New Orleans. So I just think Detroit is the complete football team, and I think they've climbed the ladder to the point last year they knocked at the playoff door. This year they go through the playoff door. And I'll tell you, going into the Lions' den to play, that's hard. Those fans are crazy.
They haven't had much to root for in forever, right?
And they've continued to support it, and now they got something to root for.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I got Detroit winning. Chicago. I tried in my mind's eye to think, what was the last great quarterback the Bears had?
Yeah.
Any contribution?
No. Vince McMahon? I mean,
no. That's Jim McMahon.
Excuse me, I got the wrong McMahon. Yeah, Jim McMahon. Yeah, you have to go way the hell back then.
Yeah, I think Bears quarterbacks, as a kid growing up, I remember the old-timers would remember this name, Billy Wade. He was a #1 draft pick and threw interceptions all over the place. He didn't last. And then I remember the left-handed quarterback, Bobby Douglas.
Yeah.
He was more running back than he was quarterback, and it showed in his pass statistics when he'd complete 48% of his passes. More recently, hell, I don't know. Eric Kramer maybe as a short rental in Chicago.
How about Jim Harbaugh?
Harbaugh was there, chunk of time, yeah. My only memory of him was getting screamed at by Mike Ditka on the sidelines. So what I'm trying to get to is everything's changing in Chicago. Caleb Williams, NFL people that I network with think that he is of the trait that could be the next Patrick Mahomes.
Cool. But
what's different in Chicago is he's walked in there and they added Keenan Allen of the Chargers. That's 900 receptions. He had traded for Carolina's top wide receiver, DJ Moore. That's big-time player. They got 2 tight ends, and then they drafted Roman Odunze from the University of Washington, and they're 3 deep at running back. So, I mean, they have everything around the kid quarterback, and their offensive line are a bunch of beasts. Not sexy names, but guys who can play. Defensively, it's typical monster of the midway defense. I think Chicago is right there. They're going to be a playoff team, and I think they're going to be the surprise team in the league if Caleb doesn't get hurt. Now, they're not equal to Detroit. Green Bay, Jordan Love sat there, learned, got the chance. Boy, did he play well last year. 3,200 yards, I think it was, and like 34 touchdowns and not a ton of picks. I thought he played well. I think Green Bay's season it twirls not so much around Jordan Love now. They've had so many injuries. All their kid wide receivers are always hurt. But what's been added is they went out and got Josh Jacobs from the Raiders, and that's heavy duty. They have not had that kind of running back on a consistent basis. So I think that's going to be good. They had Aaron Jones, they had A.J. Dillon. Jones left as a free agent. Dillon is on IR right now. But Josh Jacobs, he just plays and plays and plays. I mean, he might get 300 touches this season. I think Green Bay is going to be pretty good, and they have a new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, which has got to make him a little bit more consistent. And the last one is Minnesota. I just think it's going to be a painful year for Kevin O'Connell. He lost J.J. McCarthy. He lost his defensive end, Danielle Hunter. They had bad salary cap problems. That's why Dalvin Cook exited there a year ago. He's going to have to coach up Sam Darnold. Darnold's a great physical specimen, but you look at him 5-6 years into his career and say, why is he making that throw? It just doesn't make sense as it relates to Sam Darnold. I don't know where his football intellect is. There's no doubt he's a stud. So and their 5-game schedule to start the season is just give you a headache to look at it. So at the end of the day, I think this is a tough year for Kevin O'Connell. And again, that division, Detroit is far and away better than anybody else, but you got Caleb and you got Jordan Love. John?
This is an odd division because you look at these teams and they have such a long reputation in the NFL, but so many of them have gone forever without being relevant. I mean, the Vikings made, 4 Super Bowls back in the 70s? Have they even made it in the modern era? I don't think they have. I mean, Green Bay obviously has a track record. The Bears, you said, didn't have a quarterback forever. And the Lions, oh my God, the Lions haven't been anything until the last couple of years. So you love to see Detroit having some success here. Jared Goff was a number 1 overall pick. I mean, and the Rams traded him away. He's turned out to be a lot better than we thought.
They grew him. He was not a gunslinger when he got to L.A. with the Rams. And they brought him along, but he didn't look like a difference maker. And when the trade occurred, Matthew Stafford, that was a big money situation for Detroit. And so the Lions moved him. And the Rams inherited a vested veteran who's a big-time player. And what was the end result? Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think that was a win-win deal, don't you think?
Yeah. And Goff had to grow into it, but Dan Campbell coached him hard, and they coached him up into it.
Nice.
And Goff's a really different quarterback right now. So if you like the NFC North, anybody out there agree or disagree with us about the Lions, da Bears, feel free to join us. Fans Forum box will be open for business as soon as we are done. We go from there. We're going deep south.
Into the South. The South rises again.
Oh, it does. Atlanta. Now, this might be a reach. Think somebody would call me stupid? Nah. Yes, they will. I got Atlanta winning the South.
Yeah?
I think Kirk Cousins is a massive difference maker because he walks into a situation in which they got a quality running back in Bijan Robinson from Texas, second-year player. They got Kyle Pitts, monster tight end from, University of Florida. They got wide receivers, Drake London, ex-USC. In other words, they got a lot of skilled people, but they haven't had a quarterback. Now they got Kirk Cousins who throws it and throws it and throws it. So that's going to be fun. What they did, though, in the offseason, well, I thought they were going to draft defense. Instead, they took Michael Penix, the quarterback of the future. What they did right before camps open is they made a trade to get Matthew Judon. That's a Pro Bowl linebacker who was with Belichick in New England. Got great credentials, and he's a fiery leader. And we have a young team. You need somebody who's going to pick up the flag and follow me. And then they got Justin Simmons, Pro Bowl cornerback, who was a salary cap victim with the Denver Broncos. So I think that Cousins makes the Atlanta Falcons a complete football team. Tampa Bay. They got Baker Mayfield, and he's got a little bit of gunslinger in him, and he kind of became popular last year. He washed out of Cleveland. A lot of people thought that they'd much rather have Baker than the amount of money and the draft picks they traded to get Deshaun Watson. But Mayfield bounced around, went to Tampa, had a pretty good statistical season. He's got a couple of really good wide receivers, led by Mike Evans. and a guy from Penn State. Don't know that they got enough running game, but Mayfield likes to throw the football. They do play hard defense, really rugged defense. So that's going to be fun watching. New Orleans Saints, I feel bad for Derek Carr. I mean, if it was tough on him being with the Raiders in a bad situation, it's been tough on him in New Orleans. They just don't have a lot. Organizationally, they haven't drafted well. They do have Alvin Kamara back as running back, but they got rid of their top wide receiver because of a siege of injuries and salary cap problems. They do have the young guy, Chris Olave, who's from here, but he's got to stay healthy, stay on the field. They've lost some people defensively, and I think Dennis Allen, the head coach, is in big trouble. I think he might be the first one to get thrown out of here if they have another substandard season. And the last one is Carolina. Bright young quarterback Bryce Young, but that was the 3 Mile Island scenario I told you about. You draft a quarterback and he gets in there and there's nobody around him, and he's really struggled. Struggled in terms of getting him in the end zone. Struggled with turnovers. He got his brains beat out. You know, this is a team that traded away Christian McCaffrey and traded away DJ Moore, who were their 2 cornerstone offensive stars. So I don't think Carolina, they got holes everywhere. And then the kid they just drafted, the running back from Texas, Jonathan Brooks, he's not on the roster. He's on IR to start the season because he's not recovered from early knee surgery last season at the University of Texas. And so when you're in the gutter, it takes a long time to climb out of the gutter, and that's where the Carolina Panthers are right now in Charlotte.
Do you think the Panthers maybe regret not taking C.J. Stroud last year?
Everybody probably regrets not looking longer at C.J. Stroud. But Bryce Young, there's no doubt. I mean, he had a great career. He was a really good football player. But that being said, you need people around you, and we don't have that in Charlotte right now.
Yeah, and I look at this. I love seeing Atlanta at the top of the list. Remember, they made that Super Bowl like about 5-6 years ago. Remember, the whole thing flipped at halftime. Brady got another ring. So you see these teams here, and this has been really the Saints division for such a long time. So I'd love to see some new blood. And, by the way, when I was growing up, back when I was a little kid, the Falcons were in the NFC West. I mean, thank God for, reconfiguration. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see. Kirk Cousins, big difference maker, I think. And overall, what I think, Sean's a really weak division.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, last stop on our NFL preview.
The NFC West. I mean, is this the Niners division again?
San Francisco. Until somebody takes them down. Now, they have to do it in a Super Bowl. They've won 25 games the last 2 years. They've been pretty impressive. And they found a quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant, and he's become a star in Brock Purdy. And they got McCaffrey. And they redid Deebo Samuel's contract yesterday. That's why they came up with the money for Brandon Ayuk, and they got George Kittle. I mean, that's a phenomenal offensive package that Kyle Shanahan has to work with. Defensively, they've gone through a little bit of transition there. They've lost some people, but, man, they got Nick Bosa. And Nick Bosa makes things happen on the field, and they're very active linebackers. They've found some guys to play in the secondary, some guys they got in free agency. I just think it's a really good football team offensively and a real physical football team defensively. Rams, I think Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the NFL in terms of messaging with players how to be good in the NFL, and he's done it. And what I thought was going to be misery, a year ago this week, he had an absolute crap season in 2022 and thought about quitting. And I remember saying on this podcast, he didn't like 2022. This might be worse than 2023. And what they did, they won 10 games. Mm-hmm. He coached those kids up. Now, they had a stroke of luck. They hardly had any injuries at all last season. Their offensive line played every game in front of Matthew Stafford. When was the last time in society you ever saw that in the NFL? No.
Never.
So that was last year. This year is going to be harder. I mean, there's no doubt Stafford's accomplishments in his resume. There's no doubt how the greatness of Cooper Kupp, but he's had a knee injury, and that's been a big issue. There's no doubt about the tight end, Tyler Higbee, but he's not there. He's on IR with an injury. Puka Nacua came out of nowhere. The kid out of BYU, what a phenomenal rookie season he had. Kyron Williams, headed for his third year at Notre Dame, heavy-duty running back, and they drafted Blake Corum, Michigan, dart dash, third down back. So I think their skill people are good. The problem is what's happened up front. They didn't experience this last year. They are down 3 offensive linemen to start the season.
That's brutal.
And those are all starters. Outside of their number one draft pick last year, all the key guys are hurt. So they're going to Detroit into the Lions' den on opening day, and they're facing those Lions who are showing their teeth in that pass rush with backup offensive linemen. That's going to be hard. So, and defensively, they lost 2 of their top 3 cornerbacks. There is no Aaron Donald to anchor everything at the defensive tackle, and they traded away Ernest Jones, the linebacker. Now, they drafted 2 really good pass rushers, in Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk. They're both going to start. But that defensive side of the football now, without Aaron Donald and with Ernest Jones having just been traded, that is going to be such a young defense, and they're going to probably go through some growing pains. I got the Rams finishing second. I just don't think it's going to be easy. Seattle, life after Pete Carroll, young defense. They have drafted a lot of young guys. They've thrown them on the field. You know, the life after the Legion of Doom has been kind of painful. The Super Bowl teams that Pete Carroll had, they're fixing their defense. They do have Geno Smith back at quarterback. They do have DK Metcalf. They're 3 deep at wide receiver, which I think is going to be positive. And they got a heavy-duty running back I think is going to have a breakout season in Kenneth McIntosh. He's from Michigan State. But no Pete Carroll there. So that bears watching to see how they do, though the coach they got from the Baltimore Ravens to become head coach I think has great credentials. And then there's Arizona. And maybe I'm going to get skewered on this one. I do take opinion stands that sometimes people don't agree with, you think?
Who, you?
No, not me. They got Kyler Murray, and he is a great talent. And they got James Conner, who's a heavy-duty, complete running back. And they drafted Marvin Harrison, who is an absolute studded wide receiver. But I don't like their offensive line. I don't think they have enough defense. They were miserable last year. Jonathan Gannon came in. He was a former coordinator in Philadelphia, got the head job. I thought he was going to make an impact, and they had a miserable season. Of course, Murray kept getting hurt. I just don't think they have enough players. But it'll be interesting to watch the dynamics of that quarterback, that do-everything running back, and that kid wide receiver from Ohio State. But I just don't think they have enough players. So that's my view on the NFC West. I know your heart is in the NFC West. Don't lie to me. You're a transplanted 49er from San Francisco. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you got to pick the Niners here, right? I mean, obviously, they're the top team in the division. It was interesting reading in your best 15 that Brandon Ayuk finally came to a contract resolution, and then I was reading that he even admitted that he probably pushed it too far in the negotiation. What's your take on that?
Well, that's him. Does the correct term apply here? Diva?
Yeah.
God, I get tired of it. I don't think I could be a general manager in the NFL. You know, because your responsibility, John Riley, as a general manager in the NFL is the whole team, not the one diva wide receiver or the holdout left tackle who's got 3 years left on his contract and now wants it redone again. If I was a GM, I think I'd have a meltdown. You know, I'd tell my left tackle, you don't want to play. That's your name. That's your signature on the contract. You don't want to play. Apply for a job down at Dairy Queen. Now, that might not be a smart way to do business because you'd be running off one of the best left tackles in the league. But somewhere along the way, if you sign the bloody contract, shouldn't you hold up to terms of the contract, especially since we restructured it already? So I don't know how John Lynch got through all this without losing his mind. But they got him signed. All these guys are on the field. Now they go play and win. What's your take on McVay and the Rams?
You know, Rams fans, generally speaking, seem to be optimistic. A lot of people are saying Jared Verse is a terrific pick. He's going to make a big difference. I worry what you're saying is the offensive line and their ability to protect Stafford. Because if Stafford goes down, then what are you left with? Is it going to be the Stetson kid from Georgia?
Stetson Bennett. If Stafford were going to hurt in weeks 1 or 2, Stetson Bennett has to play because Jimmy Garoppolo has a 2-game suspension. Garoppolo will be the backup quarterback starting in week 3, but it's just not going to be the same team. And you know they got through with no injuries in their offensive front last year. I've never ever seen an offensive front all the starters started every game. Never seen that ever. So I think it's going to be tough there. Okay. That is the NFL preview.
Can I just make one general comment here?
Go ahead, step in it.
This is kind of a weird thing, but I don't even remember, like, about when we were doing the preview for Major League Baseball, remember I made a comment that it always seems to start with the AL East and finish with the NL West. And sure as hell, that's how we just did the thing for the football. We started with the AFC East and worked our way to the NFC West.
It's your fault. I blame you entirely. You're the one that wanted to do this podcast. You're the one that introduced me to do this podcast. So if you don't like the format of the podcast, it's on you. No.
I mean, you're just reinforcing what everyone else does in the media, too. And so we're always at the tail end in the National League.
This podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers, 9 stores to serve you in San Diego. If you've got projects, these people have the materials. You need to visit DIXIELINE Lumber and see what they can offer to you. We're ready for Fans Forum. We're talking a ton of NFL at the last minute. If you want to jump in with a college football comment, you want to talk a little baseball pennant race, we'll make a rule change. We'll allow you to join us, too, on Fans Forum. John? Look at these people lined up. Go ahead. Where do you want to start?
Okay, let's start with a little bit of NFL here, and this is from Angel. He says, if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, the Jets should finish 10-7 with a wild card spot.
Angel, I think they're going to do well as long as Aaron Rodgers holds up. But what's different about Jets football today is they remade the entire offensive line. Now, they busted some number 1 picks that didn't work out. They've gotten rid of all those guys. I think the acquisition of Tyron Smith, the Pro Bowl left tackle, who had been a left tackle forever, protecting Dak Prescott, I think that makes a massive, massive difference. So I think if Rodgers stays healthy, I think that they're a team to be reckoned with because they've got people. Garrett Wilson, wide receiver, Ohio State, he's a stud. And now you add Mike Wilson there, Mike Williams, the ex-Charger. And you added 3 offensive linemen. And Breece Hall came back from the knee injury, and he's a fine running back. He's out of Iowa State, and they've always played rugged defense. So, Angel, I believe, like you, I think the Jets are going to be pretty good. Next question.
Okay, let's go on down here. It's another comment on Aaron Rodgers. Everyone's curious about this guy. 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers is going to try to scramble and juke like 20-year-old Aaron Rodgers used to, and something's going to snap again. Don't know how much he has left.
Well, I guess that's a safe thing to assume, but he's not a running quarterback. He just moves the pocket and gets out of pressure, and he makes plays because his vision is so unbelievable. His ability to read defenses is phenomenal, but they've surrounded him with some real warriors in that offensive front. This is going to be a very different offensive line from the New York Jets, so I'm not worried about the fact he might be approaching 40. I think the guy can still play as long as he doesn't get hurt, and it was a fluke injury. I mean, he didn't get crushed when he went down at the start of last season. He just made a turn and his foot exploded. Give him some space and let's just see.
Yeah, exactly. I don't remember him even being hit on that. It was just the weirdest thing. But, he's been there on the sidelines. He's been watching the team, so, through part of last year. But it was always funny when Zach Wilson would throw an interception. You'd see Aaron Rodgers roll his eyes back. So let's see if the wise one can come back.
They got 1 year to fix it. And also, they're going to be playing to save Robert Saleh's job, I think, as head coach. We move on.
Okay, let's go here to Jeff. He goes, I'm ready for disappointment, as I always am, being an Arizona Cardinals fan. LOL.
Well, it's just not a good situation. I have huge reservations about Michael Bidwell, the owner of the team. We got to the end of last season, Jeff, and it was just a disaster. They had, 5 or 6 vice presidents quit on the football administration side and the business side. I think it's a disaster. Jonathan Gannon was hired. He came from Philadelphia. He's got great track credentials as a defensive coordinator. There's no doubt that they've got 3 or 4 really good skilled people on offense, but I don't know about the rest of the roster. I mean, they're cutting number 1 draft picks or offensive linemen, et cetera. So it's just at this point, I don't think it's a very well-run franchise. They're in a very unstable situation. And we'll see if Kyler Murray can rally this thing, and he's got to stay on the field. I mean, if they're going to compete, he's got to be able to play, and he needs to stop running because he's gotten busted up a couple of times because he's always in scramble mode.
It's interesting that we praise the NFL for trying to have parity and the revenue sharing and how it makes the league more balanced. But there are still teams like this that are in the dregs, that are in the gutter every year. It seems the Cardinals are one of them. But lately, the last 4 to 5 years, they have been better. We were all optimistic, and then they always disappointed, didn't they? I mean, so it's a rough go. Bidwell, he's just jinxing the whole thing.
Use the last name, Bidwell.
Yeah,
Bidwell, Arizona Cardinals. Bidwell, Phoenix Cardinals. Bidwell, St. Louis Cardinals. Bidwell, Chicago Cardinals.
He goes all the way back there.
That's a family hand-me-down thing. They don't have any football credibility or accomplishment. It was just given to them in the will and the estate. That's a big issue as to why they are where they are. Jeff, Arizona, good luck to you. Hope you'll continue to follow us.
Okay, let's go here. Angel had a comment here about the AFC West. He says, with the AFC being loaded, I don't see the Broncos as a playoff team, but I do see Denver going 9-8 in 2024.
9 wins might be a reach. 9 wins, you're telling me Bo Nix is going to be superstar. 9 wins, you're telling me they're not going to have any injuries. When the hell's that ever happen? But I think they'll be competitive. As long as they can keep their guys on the field and Nix grows to what Peyton really needs, I think they're going to be good. They're going to be a hell of a lot better than I've been. But 9 wins, that's tough. This division, AFC West, is pretty doggone rugged, considering you got to play Mahomes and you got to play Justin Herbert, and then you got to play the whole aura of the Raider Nation. So 9 wins would be a stretch for me. If they get this thing close to 500 and they stay healthy, that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, I agree. Now, why did you think Denver held on to all 3 quarterbacks, though? I mean, are they just kind of hedging their bet?
Well, salary cap issues. If they cut either Stidham or they cut Zach Wilson, they take another hit. And they got so much dead money. It's an all-time record amount. I want to say it's $55 million in dead money against the cap. Well, it's the Russell Wilson deal.
Yeah.
So at this point, insurance policy, if Nix can't handle it, or if Nix gets hurt, then you got 2 other veterans. And it's odd. Zach Wilson played really well in preseason for Sean Payton after just being horrific and out of touch and out of sync with everything he did with the New York Jets. So, yeah, it's going to be a hard season. I should say a growing season in Denver if they can keep their guys on the field.
Let's move on here. Let's go to Junior. Talk about the New York Football Giants. He goes, how long are the New York Football Giants going to stick with Daniel Jones? He stinks. # number 1 overall pick.
Junior, they gave him a mega contract extension. I mean, they owe him volumes of money. Now, he's a great athlete. What's wrong in New York is not the quarterback per se. What's wrong in New York is, I think, the football decision makers per se. I don't think they've drafted well. I don't understand some of the free agent acquisitions, and I surely don't understand you letting Saquon Barkley go out the door and go to the enemy on the other side of the bridge, the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think the leadership and the decision making on the football side of the building has really caused the problems. If they could surround Jones with better players and protect him, the beating he took last year is maybe as bad as I've seen in the NFL in a long, long time. He's a tough guy and he's an athlete, but you got to have players. Last I checked, there's 11 guys on offense, and one guy can't do it by himself, and that's what's gone on in New York.
Jones always strikes me as just sort of the guy was really good in college, but really maybe not an NFL guy, but it was just the timing of the years and the draft and where New York Giants happened to be. They needed a quarterback. He was at the top of the list, but I don't think we felt the same way about him as we do about C.J. Stroud or Caleb Williams or any of these other top picks.
No, I agree with you. I mean, he came out of I think it was a Duke. He came out of the Atlantic Coast Conference, and he was the thrower, but he wasn't Eli Manning. He wasn't Peyton Manning. He wasn't any nationally known Caleb Williams type talent. And they got him and they got Saquon Barkley, and I thought, okay, they're going to fix this thing. But then they did nothing. And then Jones kept getting hurt, and the number 1 picks hurt. They had number 1 picks that broke down physically, number 1 pick that they threw out the door because they broke down mentally on him. He wasn't dedicated to be a pro. I mean, they've had a lot of problems with overall draft choices per se. So he just needs to get better people around him. Next question.
Okay. Do you want to take any complaints from the
please
fans?
do. Yes,
okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, here we go.
I'm probably making reference to you.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go here to Big Daddy. Go, this old man is a moron.
You shouldn't talk about John Riley that way. I'm a moron. Thank you. Hey, Big Daddy, thank you for participating and following. I hope you'll continue to follow us. But no, I'm not a moron. I just know what I know.
You know what you know. But see, the thing is that you've been doing one man's opinion for 40 years, and you're going to piss people off.
No, here's the question. Big Daddy, if you got a beef about something I said as it relates to a team or a player, let me know what the beef is so I can respond. You just can't identify me under the umbrella of the word moron. That's not right. I just gave you an hour worth of insight for every team in the NFL, and you call me a moron? Or you meant him? All right, go ahead.
Yeah, no one brings this amount of data to a podcast. Okay, here we go. Let's get in a little bit of college football. This is from Chris. He goes, something brewing in Westwood. Don't sleep on UCLA, Saw. The resilience they showed overcoming a 10-0 deficit, rushing for 23 total yards against a perennial defensive powerhouse like Hawaii was remarkable, and they did it in front of a hostile crowd of 8,000 Hawaii fans. Look out, Big Ten. Oh, yeah, and Coach Foster is second to none speaking in front of the press. Sound off.
I guess Chris is not a UCLA fan, or maybe he's a pissed-off UCLA fan. I think it's going to be a long season. I really do. And the wreckage and the aftermath of Chip Kelly is going to haunt them for a while. A, they got money problems. B, they're in the wrong conference. C, they haven't been able to recruit. And D, the cupboard's kind of bare. I was stunned. And John and I were at the San Diego State game against Texas East Texas State Chamber of Commerce.
A&M.
Yeah. We were at Snapdragon, and I texted him, and he was sitting on the 50-yard line seats drinking champagne or whatever. I said, UCLA is losing in the third quarter at Hawaii 10-0. I shook my head. I remember that. Jeez, how is that possible? And Hawaii is a bottom echelon team in the Mountain West Conference. So I just think it's going to be a really tough year. I'm not going to dump on Deshaun Foster. I was stunned that they did not get more out of their offense because Eric Bieniemy is the one is really coaching the offensive side of the football now as their coordinator. And they couldn't run the ball worth a lick. I think they had 18 rushes for 34 yards at Hawaii. How's that possible? And Garber's the quarterback. At one point was 8 for 21 throwing the football. How's that possible? 6th-year guy. So they got a lot of work to be done there. I think it's going to be a really hard season, and maybe you just got to transition out of what was left behind from Chip Kelly, and he's got to go get his own players, and he and Bieniemy have great credentials in the community recruiting. So maybe it's just not going to be this year. Maybe it's going to be a year down the road. Well, maybe they'll turn the corner. But road back, I think, is going to be hard because I think Kelly left a real mess here.
Yeah, well, it's your first year coaching. It's going to be tough to rebuild the culture. Sure. But wasn't it like last year about this time, the kid was Dante Moore, right? That was the quarterback that was a freshman that didn't play very much. If I recall, he transferred to Oregon, but I guess he's going to be backing up Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah. I don't know if you call it a redshirt season, but he will be at Oregon. He'll be the quarterback next season.
Yeah. So UCLA, it's just weird. They don't have a football stadium on campus. You got to go to the Rose Bowl, and it's funny. Usually UCLA, you think of them as a basketball school first, anyways.
Well, but they've had great success in football chunks of time, but this chunk of time, no. Chris, thank you for the input. Go ahead, John.
Okay, let's get one more here from Greg. And he says, Lee, what additions would you like to see to improve the Padres for next season? Resign, go after one of the Mariners' starting 5 pitchers. They need hitters. Best sports show online and radio.
Well, you're correct with the last sentence. I'm not so sure that they have to go do a lot of stuff in the offseason. They're going to have to juggle the payroll a little bit, because Profar is going to ask for a healthy pay raise. He's not going to play for $1.5 million. So that's something you're going to have to keep an eye on. Obviously, they've got tremendous investment in the veteran pitchers on the staff. I mean, they're committed to a lot of big money for a long period of time, to Machado, to Tatis, to Bogarts, to Cronenworth. There's not a lot of cap space that they're going to be able to go do something creative. And by the way, Seattle's pitchers are all under contract, and I don't think they're going to be traded. If the Mariners don't get to the playoffs, I think there's going to be a general manager's change in addition to the managerial change they've already made. I think Jerry Dipoto might be on very thin ice in Seattle if this does not work out. And they're scuffling to be a 500 team, and have let Dipoto do everything he's wanted. But Seattle's pitchers I don't think are available. And I just don't know that the Padres have any budget space to, quote, be a player in free agency. Prime example, if Roshi Sasaka from Japan gets posted or comes here as a 23-year-old, there's going to be a massive bidding war. But I don't see how the Padres could afford to bid on him only because of all the money that they've got invested in all these veteran players.
Well, first of all, why in the hell are we talking about next year?
I mean, it was right there at the front of my mind. Why are we worried about December 1st in the winter baseball meetings? Pal, we got to get to October 1st.
Exactly.
But that being said, they're going to be dangerous as hell in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah, this is just shaping up to be a great September, great pennant race. The NFL's starting tonight. This is a great time to be a sports fan. Yeah, but in AJ, we trust, right? The executive of the year, you've called him that.
I think we got the executive of the year here, and we might have the manager of the year in San Diego's dugout. But that being said, Greg, we will talk once we drive into the football season and once we get to the approach of free agency. And then we get to the winter baseball meeting. Yeah, we're going to definitely talk.
Okay. Let's get some social media comments here. We got a lot more football questions. And let's go here. Look, Charger comment, and this is from Gabriel. He says, and this is what are the keys to the season? And he says, the key is we have a coach who knows how to unlock the player's ability on how to win.
Well, he changed the culture. He's making reference to Jim Harbaugh and the Bolts. I think the most unique thing, and I was mentioning this to somebody yesterday, and they asked me what I thought about Harbaugh, and I said, smart guy, dynamic guy, passionate guy, crazy man. He did it as a quarterback. He taught his players as a head coach in college to do it. And now he's back in the NFL where he's already done it once in San Francisco, now the opportunity to do it again. He is the most unique, experienced head coach I think of in the league because he did it as a player and succeeded. And then he was able to translate what he learned and did as a quarterback to what they could do to become better players, whether that's at tiny University of San Diego, that's at Stanford, that's at Michigan. And obviously he did the same thing in terms of the bigger picture with the 49ers, so why wouldn't you expect him to be able to do it with the Chargers? I think he's really, really unique.
Oh, yeah. And you shared that video on Twitter of all the success he had as a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
A lot of those Charger highlights. And you could tell even back then that he was able to win games just by being smarter than a lot of the people on the field because he wasn't the most athletic guy, but he would find ways to get creative to move the ball downfield. If you're a Charger fan, you got to be thrilled that there is a culture-changing leader in there to hopefully fix what the Spanoses have screwed up.
Am I correct if I'm reading between the lines that are coming out of your mouth that the word chargering will be extracted from the dictionary going forward?
Oh, no, that will never go away. As long as Spanos is here, that will still be a thing. But it's going to be a great year. I think it's going to be fun to see what they do.
How dare you criticize the first family of football, as they call themselves? The ones that have 16 winning seasons in 36 years and fired a Hall of Fame coach, Hall of Fame general manager, and a Super Bowl coach.
Yeah.
The first family of football.
How in the hell do you fire a coach that went 14-2? That one just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
On we go.
Okay, let's talk about the Chiefs here. And this is from Ray Toole. He says, there's no surprises here. I live in Missouri and moved here when Patrick Mahomes won his first. KC is a dynasty now.
Oh, exactly. I mean, you look at all the division titles, and then you look at 2 Super Bowls in a row, going for a third one. And can you imagine how many teams passed Patrick Mahomes in the draft before he got chosen by Kansas City? It's just absolutely amazing. So that's one of the unbelievable bright minds in football in Andy Reid and kind of a unique motivator. And I happen to think his general manager is a pretty good player personnel guy. And that quarterback, damn, that quarterback is good.
Yeah, I mean, remember when he first came onto the league and we were all saying, how does this guy make these sidearm passes? He was like a middle infielder in baseball. I remember
calling him Harry High School.
Yeah.
Harry High School is going to get killed doing this. Well, Harry High School's got a couple of rings on his finger now.
Well, did you see the behind-the-back no-look pass during the preseason?
Well, he wouldn't do that in the regular season.
He might. I mean, if they've been working on that. They did the ring around the posy bit a couple of years ago. Okay, let's move on here. Oh, we've got to talk about tonight. And this is from Conrad. He says, for Thursday Night Football season opener, it's like Christmas morning.
It's unbelievable. And we love baseball. And John and I talk a lot of baseball on the podcast and a lot of junk off the podcast. But the NFL is the NFL. And having lived it as the voice of the Chargers and the Seahawks, I can't tell you how electric it is on opening day, because you've gone through training camp, and prior to that the OTAs, and prior to that the draft, and before that free agency during the winter, and here you are on the precipice of the start of the season. It's just really, really electric. Now, do you wind up going 12-5, or do you wind up going 5-12? Because I experienced all that, and the season it gets to be a grind if you're not winning. Well, the Chargers had all of 6-10 seasons and a 4-12 seasons and couldn't score. That made it really hard. But everybody starts a winner beginning tonight and tomorrow night, and obviously on Sunday and Monday, at least the first weekend of the season. Everybody is tied for first place at 0-0.
Yeah, it's fun to track it from the beginning. Maybe week one, your team that never wins might be in first place after week one, which would be great. It's funny, you were talking about some of these old teams, and I remember when they went 6-10 or 4-12. Don't your brain ever have to stutter for a second now because we have a 17-game season? So it's an odd number of games. So they go 10-7 or 9-8. You have to kind of redo the numbers in your head.
I was never good in math. Doesn't matter because next season it's going to be the even number. Everybody's going to play 18 next season. I'm sure that's going to get approved.
Okay, well they used to only do 12 back in the day. Okay, here let's talk some Raiders, and this is with Gabriel. And quarterback, better off with Aiden O'Connell, in my opinion. Gardner Minshew II throws ducks. Defense upgraded, but you have to keep them off the field long enough to be effective. As long as they beat the Chargers and Broncos, that's my Super Bowl.
That's okay. I mean, you're probably one of the guys who runs into the back of the closet and touches that old dented, dusty trophy back there from Super Bowls from 50 years ago. That's okay. I think Sunday's going to be fun. There's no doubt that Minshew, he's like a member of a street gang, rides a motorcycle. Yeah. There's a persona that goes with Gardner Minshew. I call him a gunslinger. And it's going to be fascinating to see Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and all of Jesse Minter's blitz schemes against a Raider offensive line that I don't think is that great. How does Minshew cope with that and not throw picks? Or do the Raiders devise something because they know this heat's coming? He's going to throw to hot receivers. And I'll tell you what, if he gets Devontae Adams isolated on a linebacker in a crossing pattern and becomes a hot receiver, Devontae's going the distance. And he's got Jacoby Myers. And he got 2 tight ends. So it'll be interesting because this will be a test of Gardner Minshew's manhood to stay in the pocket in the face of the blitz. It's going to be a test of the Charger defense because if he gets that ball out of there and they start busting big plays, they'll chase the Chargers out of that blitz package. So that's fascinating. And then, of course, conversely, I love everything about Max Crosby, self-made individual. You got Mad Max on that end against Joe Alt, the number 1 pick. How cool is that matchup going to be? So there's so many cool storylines, plus the history of the dented trophies and the Raider fan who offered me a smoke of marijuana at halftime at the L.A. Coliseum with a guy that offered to buy me a couple beers while I was on the air. Raider fan, maybe it was Gabriel. Raider fan comes up in the second quarter of a game, and you can tell he's inebriated. This is the L.A. Coliseum, was the L.A. Raiders.
Right.
Hey, Lee, how are you? You let me buy a beer? This is halftime or late in the second quarter while I'm doing the play-by-play. Because the press box was down right above the seats.
Okay.
And he's just offering me a beer right there while I'm doing the play-by-play. Just Raider fans, they loved us. We'd go from the parking lot very early because we did this long pregame show. Mm-hmm. When we were on 690. So we would get to the stadium at about 8:30, and they were out there drinking and partying already. And we'd be walking across the parking lot to go to the tunnel to go in to the L.A. Coliseum or even the Oakland Coliseum. And they knew who I was. Some of them were L.A. fans who listened. A bunch of them were San Diego fans that come up on game day. They knew who I was, and they'd be giving me crap, and then offering, you want a joint? Want some beer? I'm sorry, 8:30 in the morning is a little early to be partying like that. And I got to go on the air for 9 hours. But Raider fans, they were so much fun to be around. And when we beat them, when we kicked Al Davis's ass, it was the most hilarious thing I ever saw. One other side story. So we're playing the Raiders. Maybe it was a Sunday night game in San Diego. Maybe it was a Monday night game. So they're going through all the pregame warm-ups, and Chargers are at one end, throwing their pass patterns and all that. And I look up, and down on the field is Al Davis with his entourage. Al Davis in all white with a black leather jacket.
Yeah, right.
Kind of like the gear you got in your closet back there, dummy. And I look up, and Stan Humphries throws this deep pass down the sidelines, and Sean Jefferson catches it and he plasters Al Davis. Davis was on the field, and he nailed him, knocked him down. And Al's glasses went flying off. His hair was all mussed, and he tore his pants. He had dirt. This is when the infield was still the infield of the baseball stadium. He had dirt all over his white pants. And Sean Jefferson, he was Mr. Attitude. I could just see him look at Al Davis and say, "Oh, man, get off the field." I'll never forget that. Davis just got sledgehammered by Sean Jefferson in pregame warm-ups.
Al Davis is like a evil villain in a cartoon, you know? I mean, what a guy. What a history in this league and everything he brought to it. I mean, props for Al Davis.
Sometimes.
A lot of the time.
Well, he brought the greatness of Marcus Allen and all the quarterbacks they developed. But the way they did their business was just to the left of shady.
Yeah, the mystique of Raider Nation. I love that vibe.
The winds of fall or the autumn or whatever from NFL films.
That's John Facenda.
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
But, you know, Raider fan is still loving beating the Chargers down by 60 points. Was it last year or the year before? Now, this game's at SoFi. What's your percentage of Raider fan versus Charger fan at SoFi?
People are saying it's going to be 70-30. Raiders.
Really?
Which is, I find that hard to believe considering it's opening day, it's Harbaugh's arrival, it's the Powder Blues, it's Justin Herbert. I find it hard to believe there'd be 70% Raider fans there, but we'll find out Sunday at 1:05 p.m. if the color of the day is silver and black.
Well, the Raider fans will be storming the gates if they can't get in.
They'll be stoned trying to get in. Hey, Gabe, thank you for the input. You enjoy that weekend, Gabe, and you get back to us Monday. We're going to do a recap of the first weekend of the season. Next one, John.
Next one. Let's talk a little bit about NFL and gambling. This is from Surf Sun Sand. He says the NFL wanted a team in Las Vegas and let the Chargers and Raiders duke it out. The NFL will not force the teams to pay the relocation fee since the NFL has capitalized on the new revenue. The NFL makes more money on gambling and fantasy than they do on TV revenue, and it was determined to get a team in Vegas. NFL is rigged. Do you think that the Raiders in Vegas is to keep the integrity of no gambling in the NFL?
Where'd that one come from?
Yeah, that's something.
Oh, that's far-fetched. First of all, the Raiders had to get out of Oakland because the place was a sewer, and they could not get a new stadium built. Oakland's finances, the infrastructure of the city of Oakland are terrible. It's a city that has a lot of financial issues. Therefore, they had to leave, and they were going to leave. That's why they left the first time, came to L.A., and then went back. The other issue was Las Vegas was a virgin market, and there was a lot of money to be made. Third item, the NFL did not want Mark Davis in Los Angeles, number 2 market in the country. Raiders, as good as they've been on the field, historically have not been a very good business model and business operation. Mm-hmm. That's a real problem. Mm-hmm. NFL knows that. Hell, talk show host knows that. So they did not. There was no way they're going to be allowed to go to L.A. And the Chargers, smart people, first family of football, they had no knowledge that Mark Davis ran a garbage can organization, had no knowledge financially what a fiasco that place was. Why would they link up with those people and think they'd get anything built? That's why they got voted down. Was it 30-1 or 30-2? They got voted down to build a new stadium and co-own it with the Raiders. All the other owners said, hell no, we're not doing that. And, of course, commissioner, they didn't want the Raiders in L.A. So that's why they went to Vegas. They got a sweetheart deal because Vegas was so desperate to get a franchise, to build its own credibility, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think this has got anything to do with gambling sponsorships or anything else. By the way, that headline, the owners who moved did have to pay and have. Last year was the first year that they started to pay, I think it's $65 million a year transfer territorial fee to the NFL. Kroenke paid it. Spanos paid it. Spanos didn't have a lot of money. Spanos had to go borrow money to build a new practice facility they just built in El Segundo. He's got bank loans everywhere. So it's a reason why the Raiders are not in L.A. The reason is that they got a sweetheart deal to go there, and everybody's excited to have the NFL there, and the Raider fans travel from all over. But they don't sell 70,000 tickets in Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. It's just kind of weird. Just like it's weird the Chargers have not been embraced in L.A., even though they got a really good quarterback, but they've been kind of dysfunctional. They've been a loser for so long that they dragged that reputation, the Spanos reputation, with them, and have not been embraced in the city of Los Angeles. Now, maybe that changes if they become a playoff team, if they ever win the AFC West, but at this point in time, no. So I'll be fascinated to see if it's a 70%, 30% Raider fan turnout Sunday against the Bolts. It's weird. They start the season, Raiders-Chargers. The last game of the season, Chargers-Raiders in Vegas.
Ah, nice bookends.
Okay, so I just said a lot. You give me your response.
Well, first of all, I hope Raider Nation shows up in force at SoFi. I want to see ruckus in the stands. I want to see people fighting it out, getting drunk off their ass. That's what makes Raider Charger games so fun. I mean, when I had season tickets at Qualcomm, Raider game was you had to go just to. You
had to be in the parking lot before the game to see what was going on in the parking lot.
Yeah, it was like watching a train wreck, and seeing the people in the stands just drunk off their butt, doing crazy stuff. It was insane. But I just want to say this. I think the NFL is better by putting their arms around gambling as opposed to pretending that it didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to, acknowledge reality, then go all in.
And we know the NFL is all about the next revenue stream.
Exactly. So why
not? How they playing a game in Brazil? You're kidding me.
Right.
Player Association is so upset about that, about the safety situation. I mean, there's a lot of problems in South America. Just go talk to the people in Venezuela.
Yeah, well, by the way, if they're in Rio at the game that's the Friday game, right? Mm-hmm. Philly against
Sao Paulo.
Pardon me?
Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Well, you know what? Twitter or X got banned in Brazil. So, it's kind of goofy stuff going on down there as well. But I think it's great that the Raiders moved to Vegas. It's also part of that tough guy, bad boy image. It all fits.
It's going to be successful up there. I just wonder what it'll be like if they actually ever win, because they haven't bleeping won in a long, long time. They're not what they used to be, even though you and other people who wear their colors, that's all they have to grasp is what used to be.
Well, 20 years ago, they played in the Super Bowl here in San Diego, mm-hmm. and they were close. But, yeah, you're right. It's been a long time. And it is interesting. There's the NFL, you would expect there'd be more turnover and these bottom feeders would win the Super Bowl, on a sort of an average basis, but it's not that way. So a lot of these teams have been banished for decades.
Organizations win.
There you go.
Bright people, organizations win. I will say this, though, to Surf and Sun. You're a Raider fan? I want you to text and I want you to email all your friends. You tell the Raider Nation I'm here talking about them Mondays at 1 p.m. and Thursdays at 1 p.m. My co-host is a refugee, got deported from the Bay Area, so you got somebody to represent your colors. So feel free, just spread the word of what we're doing, because we talk NFL all the time. You got a couple more here you want to do?
Yeah, let's, again, the Raiders-Chargers stuff together is just fantastic. Let's get another one. This is from, we already covered that one. Let's go here. This is from DZ, and he says, Herbert is an Iron Man. Bosa, on the other hand, isn't, but they have his backup plan on both the 53 and practice squad. They actually have depth this season, unlike last decade with Coupon Tom.
Well, I think, in all honesty, they have great athleticism on the defensive side of the football. They got a lot of guys, the Chargers do, who can run, and now they got 3 number 1 draft picks in the offensive front. I think their front is pretty doggone good, and I think the pass protection is going to be worth watching. This Max Crosby versus Joe Alt matchup on Sunday is, I'm going to be charting this. This is worth seeing who gets beat, how many times they get beat, and then conversely, the Raiders, how the hell are they going to handle the blitz? Because I have no doubt that Jesse Minter is going to send people all day after Gardner Minshew. Now, will the Raiders beat him off the blitz? Will they get him out of the blitz because they keep hitting passes down the field? I think it's going to be a throwing game for the Raiders. I think it's going to have to be a throwing game for the Chargers. I think it's going to be a fun football. What a way to start the season to face the enemy.
Yeah, it's always great when you have that. Good guy, bad guy, the whole thing. Now, for the Chargers, I would expect, with the new kids on offense, you're not sure, but I'm going to say they're probably going to be all right. But it was always the defense for the Chargers. They couldn't stop the run, especially in that playoff game in Jacksonville. Derwin James is getting burned left and right. I mean, do you think they've fixed the defense?
I don't know that they got answers to questions at defensive tackle. Do they have enough to stop people from running the ball? Because people have run the ball on them each of the last couple of years. But I have no doubt. I think collectively, if you've pulled up a depth chart, you looked at the 7 linebackers that they have, They got guys who can fly. They have guys that are very physical. They have veteran guys. They have young athletes. They've covered the whole spectrum with the 7 linebackers that they've got. And they seem to think that they've got enough cornerbacks now. They just made the trade to get Elijah Molden, who was a starter and a nickelback from Tennessee. And they got Christian Fuller, who had come from Carolina. He had been a starter. So they've got some new cornerbacks to go with Derwin James and Gilman at safety. So only time will tell. But I think their pass rush is going to change the chemistry of everything as it relates to the opposing quarterback.
Yeah, and then you got Minshew there who's going to scramble, and it's going to be a cat and mouse for sure. But, DZ kind of talks about Telesco as Coupon Tom. I know you like Telesco, but do you figure he was a cheapskate, or that was really Spanos?
I like Tom. I think he's a smart guy. He's not a bold guy. He's not brazen. He's not Joe Hickson, who's making all these last-minute trades to churn the roster. So I think that's going to be fascinating to see what the Raiders do. Telesco is the one that's been given the final authority over the roster. He walks in and he tells Antonio Pierce, this is your 53. Now, Pierce coach him up. And Pierce is a pretty good motivator. But this is Telesco's roster. What happened here, I think John Spanos carried a lot more weight than Telesco did, and John Spanos was, gee, Dad, thanks for the job. I'm not sure he was qualified at all. But the committee, they made mistakes 3 years in a row on coaching hires. Brandon Staley, who was a bright light defensive coordinator, that was a failure. I never understood Anthony Lynn. I always viewed him as strictly as a glorified offensive running backs coach. When they hired Mike McCoy out of Denver, McCoy was the hot coordinator on everybody's job list, and I thought it was going to work, and he got here, and he just seemed to be overwhelmed with the whole responsibility. So they went out and got experience this time, and they paid phenomenal, $7 to $8, $9 million for Harbaugh. They'd never done that. They'd always hired young, inexperienced, and on the cheap. Well, now they've invested in somebody with a resume. Now, Harbaugh's got a hell of a resume compared to John Spanos or Dean Spanos.
So who was the coach before McCoy? Was it Norv Turner?
Yes, and prior to that was Schottenheimer, who they ran out at 14-2.
Yeah, exactly. So look at the track record here of management is so horrible, And like you, I didn't feel like the previous coach, Brendan Staley, was a leader of men. He might have been a bright light. He might have had some schemes. Smart guy, but he wasn't like the guy that you want to hold the flag leading the charge onto the field. He was more of the brainiac.
So it didn't work. It didn't work at all. I don't know if he'll ever be a head coach again. But he's up in Los Angeles. He's the assistant head coach, and he's overseeing the defense for the L.A. Rams and Sean McVay. And McVay, obviously, he's a bright light too.
These guys all land on their feet, even like the offensive coordinator you said is now in Philly,
right.
Kellen Moore. So, these guys, you think they're the dregs, they're screwing up, but they land on their feet somewhere.
Okay, listen, we hope you have enjoyed everything you have tried to present your way. Opening night of the NFL season, opening weekend of the NFL season, couple of business items. Want you to join my Twitter all-star team on X. My handle, my slug line, my name, @Hacksaw1090. Just go to X, hit the follow button when you punch up my handle. I want you to tell everybody what we're doing. Mondays, 1 p.m., Thursdays, 1 p.m. Want you to share. Want you to subscribe. Thereby, you will get the alerts every time we put something up on the YouTube channel. And I promise you, I implored John not to post things at 3 o'clock in the morning on the YouTube channel, but it takes time for people to learn how to do this thing correctly. So we got that. Also want you to check my website. I write on it every day. I guarantee if you start to read it, like me or dislike me, you'll read it every day because it's bleeping brilliant. This podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers, 9 locations to serve you. You got projects, we want you to visit and talk to them at DIXIELINE Lumber. John, ready, set, go.
Thursday night football, I'm picking the Chiefs. How about you?
I'm picking Kansas City, too. You have yourself a great sports weekend. We'll be back here Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific. Thanks, as always, for taking part. Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast app.
Touchdown, San Diego!
For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.